All right, it's Monday, December 7th. I'm going to give a slight explanation of what's happening and what has happened with the vote fraud that was done on November 3rd in the presidential election and how it was done. So before I do that, I think that one of the things that I should go over first is, polling, right? So, of course, the polls this year, as they were in 2016, were way off, right? And that's why a lot of people are calling those polls suppression polls, because they report for a candidate to be way up or way down, which is the opposite of what is actually being shown with when you actually poll an equal amount of both parties, right? And when you look at, say, turnouts for rallies, etc., right? So one type of poll that is very accurate is called an exit poll. That's when you're actually having an election, for instance, and you're asking people how they either voted or intend to vote, right? These people that are sure of what they did or they're about to do, right? And so with that, you can actually see, based on the percentage of people that you are questioning, you could see what the trajectory is. When you take an actual exit poll of people that are leaving the voting facility, right, and you're, again, asking an equal amount of people from all parties involved, you can get an understanding for how the voting is going so far. When you're having an election like presidential election and they're doing early voting, they're getting those early reports, this just in from such and such jurisdictions, those things are very valuable, because what you'll find is, as you're sampling a population, if they're voting, say, 70-30 or 60-40, it's going to continue to be that way, roughly, right? Of course, you'll factor in the counties that are remaining. Sometimes you can see that the counties are, historically blue, historically red, and based on that, the Associated Press will make a call for that state. What we saw on November 3rd was that in a lot of these states, like the swing states that can go blue or red, it's really important. Those early votes, those early totals, they tell a big story. They're telling you literally in this swing state that people either go, Democrat or Republican. They really tell you how that population is thinking. Okay? Now, when we took a look at some of these states on November 3rd, late night November 3rd, right before everything got shut down, a lot of these states, Trump was leading by a very significant amount of votes, right? As mentioned before by a lot of people, normally the Associated Press would be moving to call some of those states. So let's take a state, let's take a situation, because I think this will be valuable in this explanation. Say you have a state that has 1,000 registered voters, right? So whoever, you have two candidates, 1,000 registered voters, whoever gets to 501 is going to win the election, right? Similar to what you had on November 3rd, the night of November 3rd, you had like Trump at 400, right? And Biden at like 100. That is telling you, in a swing state especially, how the rest of the election is going to play out, how the counting of the remaining votes is going to play out, right? That's a big indicator. That's a very big indicator, so much so that you have polls specially designed to take a look at early voting, right? These exit polls. So, based on this trajectory, which shows not a neck and neck ballot, neck and neck count race, right? You have something that's, one candidate is leading by an almost insurmountable amount of votes. And then everything went dark. Everyone went to sleep, right? And you're like, okay, Trump has this in the bag, clearly. Well, a lot of you are, very surprised when you woke up, the morning of November 4th and found quite the opposite. Biden super performed, right? Went above all odds. This is something, with all these anomalies, this just doesn't happen, right? Biden makes this incredible comeback from these few jurisdictions, based on these few jurisdictions, right? So based on the evidence that's come out so far for both the affidavits, sworn affidavits, punishable under perjury, right? Expert witnesses, right? And also information on studying the voting systems like Dominion. See that Dominion has the ability to manually change the computer score in a number of ways. One of those ways is through weighted votes. So based on a USB stick that could be connected to the machine, you could program the machine to assign more of a weight to one candidate and less to another, right? For instance, in one of the machines that's been confiscated so far shows that if you feed 50 ballots into the system, 50 for Biden and 50 for Trump, an equal amount, right? So at the end, the machines should report a total of 50 for Biden and 50 for Trump. If you feed those 50 in over and over again, the machine reports that Biden has 87 and Trump has 13, right? So you see it's taking something like 74% of Trump votes and giving them to Biden. Whereas if you do it again over and over, it's never taking the Biden votes and giving them to Trump. This is not a faulty machine. It's just programmed to be that way. This is a feature of this system, actually not a bug, right? It's a feature, a documented feature in the manual of the actual product. You could do a weighted count. Another way you can change the votes based on, not what people are doing, but on your liking is through adjudication. So something is wrong with a ballot during the count. Those ballots will actually be set aside and put in a certain pile. And for those ballots, you can do two things. You could fill out duplicate ballots, right? Which we've seen in some of the sworn testimony. So they will get these slips, and some of the testimony is that they're filling out Trump votes that are clearly for Trump. They're filling them out on those pink slips or those new ballots for Biden, right? Some of those ballots that were for Trump, they get a new ballot and go straight down ticket for Biden and the Democrats, right? The second way is you could take those ballots, those problematic ballots, and whoever's doing the adjudication through the machine could just do a percentage split. So they could just decide, you know what, I'm not even going to look at these ballots. I'm just going to say, take these 100 ballots, and I'm going to choose of my own free will that 90% went for Biden and 10% went for Trump. That's a feature of the machine, right? Those Dominion machines. Another way is that you can use a batch file, right? And just put in on a USB stick, you could put in any number of votes that you want. So we see that right after they shut down, this huge spike goes up, right, in the count, where Biden super performs and gets like 98% of large amounts of vote, right? Hundreds of thousands, where you have hundreds of thousands going now to Biden, unlike the tally so far, hundreds of thousands going for Biden and just a few thousand, less than 10,000 going for Trump. And these dumps, right? These dumps are coming from the USB stick. After the shutdown happens, and everyone is whisked away, you have reports that from nearby facilities, storage houses, and other methods of acquiring fake votes, they're now taking fake ballots of whatever computerized number they filled in for Biden to catch up. Those ballots are now being scanned into the system, scanned over and over into the system, right? To match whatever that computerized number was. So now you have, you wake up the next morning. Also, I should mention that Sidney Powell has some of the, shredded and trashed Trump votes. You have another instance where they were burning paper very quickly after the count was over, right? So they throw out these Trump votes that were actually for Trump, scanning all these fake votes for Biden. And now you have a situation in which the computerized number that was entered earlier now matches very, very closely. Of course, they weren't able to do it perfectly so fast. So you found like there was some, very slight discrepancy in which Trump gained a few more, right? The computerized number pretty much matches the ballot number. So it doesn't matter how many times you will ever do a recount. The recount will always say that Biden wins, Trump loses. The only way for you to actually go back, because when you look at the ballots, a lot of them, pretty much most of them, right? They will look like real ballots. Some of them are actually not real, as some witnesses have, testified to, right? But they pretty much look like real ballots. And a lot of them, the fake ballots, actually are real ballots that were just filled out for the wrong person, right? Or voted in for the wrong person. So now you have a system where the computerized ballot matches the actual ballot count, and it doesn't matter how many times you do a recount, it'll always report the same thing. Biden won by a little bit, Trump lost by a little bit, right? But if you should ever go and do full signature matching, full forensic analysis on the ink and the ballots, right? And full voter registration matching, full audits, you will find what is hidden beneath, that Biden actually did not make that huge comeback legitimately, right? And that Trump actually won. So these secretaries of states, governors are fighting tooth and nail to drive this thing home. Do not do a full audit and let this just go through. That's why they're fighting so hard not to do a full audit. And this is a multifaceted thing, but hopefully that's enough for, most people to understand why the recounts actually showed what they showed, which is Biden up by a little bit. Why another recount is not going to matter. It's always going to show that fake number. And why the only thing that's going to show what actually happened is doing a full forensic audit of what happened in those states, in those jurisdictions on November 3rd.